everyone. Welcome to a not bi-weekly Devstream. It has been a little bit since we've seen all of y'all. How is everybody doing? We've been hard at work on the Foxhole Naval Warfare update, and boy, do we got a lot for you today. So, without further ado, I'm just gonna set it up. I'm gonna set Mark up, and he can take it from here.
Yeah, it's exciting to be back. We had a momentary uh, technical difficulty, which we overcame. There was always something, and we'll try our best, but we can't promise this stream will finish without a hitch. So hopefully everything will go smoothly. And because we did start late, we're just gonna jump right into it. I'm sure you guys want to see what we've been working on instead of hearing us talk. So we're gonna dive right into it, and uh, yes, that is it. So, um, something we always like to go through with these yearly updates. It's always good as a reminder to us and to everyone who's watching. We also have a lot of new people who have joined us over the last year, just to share with you our goals from the beginning, where our minds are at. We started off on this journey 7 years ago now, really, from the time we first started writing the single line of code on Foxhole in um, building these huge persistent worlds. Our dream was a for Foxhole was this world where there's thousands of players working together, and their team isn't 32 players, 64 players like you usually see, but your team is thousands, and they're doing everything um, that's part of the war effort, from the logistics, not just the combat. And it seemed like an impossible problem to solve. How do you get thousands of players to actually work together? And it didn't work right away. It did take us some time, um, but over the years, we slowly reached that goal, and we're still working on it now. So the journey hasn't ended. And there's a few things we've always stuck to over the years, right? So a, a lot has changed in the game. If you've been around for a long time, obviously you know that Foxhole is not the same game that it used to be. But a few things haven't changed. One is a gameplay first approach. So as you know, we don't sell any microtransactions, and one of the reasons for this, it's not because um, we don't like to make more money, because obviously that can be good for development, but it's because we try our best to make sure that all our decisions are made for what is best for the gameplay, right? Which is not what you see a lot in the industry um, nowadays, right? There's a lot of decisions being made on a whole bunch of other factors, but for us, we always look at what is the best for Foxhole, what is the best for the gameplay, right? So that's something we've stuck to. We've always stuck to trying to push the envelope, taking things that we thought were previously impossible to do and trying to make it possible, right? And we did that numerous times. We started off with a single region of the world. We expanded that out into multiple regions. Eventually, we added in trenches, which at one point seemed like an impossible problem. We added trains last year in Foxhole Inferno, and hopefully this year we have a couple of new special things to share. We're very excited. Both things you may expect, and maybe some things that you might not. And we're always looking to improve things. Like I've said, over these last 7 years, um, I've said to the community, you know, we're not going to go anywhere, even though we're going to be working on Anvil, and that's an amazing project. I'm super excited about it, but we're also still going to be here working on Foxhole, and we stuck to that commitment, right? And hopefully, what we show you guys here today is proof of that commitment. So, um, this is our 54th update, right? So we produced 54 updates. Here's some of the past updates for those of you that haven't been around. And now we're adding naval warfare to that. And yeah, I guess we can just show you what naval warfare is all about. So I'm just going to jump straight into it now.
just a brief look.
Yeah, so let's start here with the large ship classes, which is at the center of this of the naval warfare update. So what we really want to do was provide an entire full-fledged experience for the naval game. We want to take Foxhole, this persistent war, and add an entire um, new new expansion of gameplay onto the naval side. And there's a lot of things here that we kept in the spirit of Foxhole. So one is that like everything, we always want lots of players to be working together. So some of the largest ships, part of naval warfare, are going to support literally dozens of crew members working both above and below deck. There's going to be many roles. They have to work. They have to work all in tandem if they want to succeed. Um, and this was a huge technical challenge in getting both the areas inside and the outside of the ship to be functional, to be walkable. You can have a firefight inside. Um, Everything just works in that sense. So one of the big goals we had at the start was ensuring that ships themselves were huge strategic level assets in the war, similar to a base, an important base in the world. These are going to be big centerpieces for the war. These ships are able to navigate into existing rivers, lakes, and also the oceans. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the stream. And one of the big things that I want to emphasize is that these ships in Foxhole fashion are meant for everyone to participate. So going back to the bunker bases, um, these are for everyone, but we specifically have designed it so that both there is both private functions. So more private groups have a role uh, in controlling these ships, but they're also 100% intended to be shared with everyone. Everyone can participate in the fun, right?
Yeah, I really
Um,
want to emphasize that point about the supports dozens of crew members. We really wanted to design these ships around effort. Like, you want as many people with you as you can get. So even if you have a clan, and even if you were working together with a small group of players to get the ship, you're going to want as many people to help you out as possible. So bring more people on, public or more clan members. We want to try to get as many people involved in this kind of gameplay as possible.
Absolutely. So, in terms of having all those roles, so in order to actually um, manage and effectively pilot and use a ship, there are numerous roles and systems on a ship that players have to work in tandem, right? So this is a very Foxhole thing, right? Like everyone has to work together. If you don't work together, you're going to lose your ship, right? So here's an example, and we're going to dive a lot deeper as we get into each type of ship. But at a high level, here's some of the roles and systems. Players have to, if you want to pilot your ship effectively, you have to manage the engine room. If you want to ensure that you're effective in combat, you have to have soldiers moving your ammo around. There's a barracks that acts like a fob, so you can set your spawn point there. You can access stockpiles, and there's other more specialized roles here. And there's other parts of the ship too. So we wanted these ships to feel like um, really, really immersive and tactile spaces. So, for example, we have ladders you can use to navigate. The doors function, you can open and close them. They have additional functionality that we'll talk about later. There's stairs, and there's the automated defenses, which again we will talk about later. But the point here is that these large ships, there are many shoes to fill and many roles here, and everybody has to work together. So, Max, is there anything you want to add to that before we move on?
Nope, that looks great.
Perfect. So, from that standpoint, we can jump into the next section here.
That was exciting. I'll say that testing these things has been such a challenge because we simply could not field enough people to run these ships.
Don't tell them that.
I mean, we did it. We did do
We
it.
did it.
It was.
We have
did it.
ways
We
to
had to.
test.
We had to
Difficult.
get creative.
Okay, so ship combat. So you guys may have noticed from the trailer there that there are a number of large artillery cannons that are built on these ships. We've given them a direct fire mode so that you can fire them directly at the enemy ship, or you can switch them to their bombardment, similar to what you guys would be used to with the artillery cannons. They will be more accurate. And the expectation here is that you're not necessarily always going to be fighting each other within range, within like close quarters, like you saw in that video. You might be shooting at each other over a long distance.
Right.
But if you do get in close, we have the support weapons we have like some more traditional support weapons like 40 millimeter, the 30 millimeter cannons, machine guns, tripod mounts. Sorry, did you want to say something, Julian?
I was going to say there might be an island in between the two ships.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Some ships have automated defenses. These are going to work in a special way, which we'll get into more later. All infantry weapons are supported on deck. So the barges you guys might be used to, we have a very limited subset of weapons that you could use on them. But with these ships, we can finally remove that limitation. So you can run any weapon that you can run on land. You can be firing bazookas at each other, or RPGs at each other, or flamethrowers if you wanted. And of course, you can board enemy ships.
So, maybe you want to talk about this after, but a question I have is, at a high level, like, can you describe what an engagement might feel like, or do you want to wait till after we talk about this next section?
I think without talking about the next section yet,
Okay.
it is a challenge getting all of your guns to bear. It takes a tremendous amount of teamwork and effort. I can't. Some of these ships taking upwards of much more upwards of 12 of a dozen players. Being able to coordinate just the weapons, just the small set of things is difficult.
So, when you're engaging with the artillery, you're engaging at the long range, but then there's also an opportunity to engage at the short range as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on.
This is personally
All right.
probably my favorite part of the whole.
What happens when your boat gets hit?
It is such a challenge trying to squeeze all this into just a couple of bullet points. But I'm going to try my best to explain how all of this comes together. So the ships can when they get shot will create leaks. These are like little breaches in the side of the ship. Where you shoot the ship is where the leak will form. So you want to be strategic about where you're putting the holes in the enemy ship. You'll want to try to aim for all of the from the front to the back of the ship. You'll want to get like a nice even spread across the entire length of the ship. The better you are at doing this, the more effective you're going to be at shutting down the enemy's crew members and their systems. Aboard the ship, you're going to want to repair the leaks on a matter of priority. You're not necessarily going to just go down the line fixing all the leaks. The leaks are going to be prioritized based on how much damage they're causing to you. For example, you could cause a leak that's below the waterline and a leak that is above the waterline. A leak that is below the waterline could be adding more water to your ship, whereas one that's above the waterline might not yet be adding water to your ship. So as the ship is taking on water, the ship is going to start to sink lower and lower into the water, which is going to make those leaks that are higher up start to sink into the water, which is going to expedite how quickly these ships can sink. So, which brings us to that last point, that the water inside the ship will actually shift the weight of the ship. So if the front is taking on a ton of water and you've maybe sealed the bulkhead doors to prevent it from spreading to other parts of the ship, the front of your ship the bow of your ship is going to start to sink into the water, and it's going to make more of the front facing leaks dip further into the water.
And one of the things that have made this possible is the entirely new water physics system that we have, right? So all these new ships are using a new physics system. We've taken a lot of the physics knowledge that we've learned from working on the land vehicles, working on the trains, and now we've applied more realistic physics to these new ships, which allows us to have this sort of dynamic system that actually differentiates where the water line is and where these shots are going. So besides repairing the leaks, Max, what are the other ways you can do to try to manage flooding in your compartments?
So as you're taking on water, you're going to want to bail out water, which we have the all too popular water bucket. Players are going to be able to walk down into the lower decks and bail out water physically and moving it up onto the deck and throwing it overboard. This will be a way to slow down the amount of water that's being taken in while your teammates are busy repairing it. And this really leans heavily into that, what we were saying before, is that even if you have a group of players that you trust and you want on board your ship, you're going to want to open your ship up to as many people as possible, because the more people you have, the more of these systems you can keep afloat. No pun intended.
Also, if you don't throw the water overboard, you're not getting it out of you're just adding it back into the boat again. So you have to aim.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, you can't just pick up water in your water bucket, throw it back into the room. It will just get re-added to the room. So you have to physically move the buckets of water out of the ship.
And at what point do you want to utilize the doors?
So the doors are a really great, almost emergency tool that when you shut them, it'll prevent the spread of water from one room to the next. But the danger of this is it limits the motion of your players through the lower deck. So if you shut the room off to the ammo room, for example, you're going to lose that gun, and players are going to have a difficult time getting to the leaks. Furthermore, if the water reaches a certain difference, so if there's a delta between the two rooms, so if one side is extremely filled with water and the other one isn't, it's going to be really hard to get that door back open again. So you got to be careful. You got to be smart about how you're going to manage your damage control on your ship.
That's really, really cool. Okay, I guess we should take a look at the fleets of each faction. So it's going to be exciting. Well, you know what? We're actually going to change our tradition and we're going to look at the Wardens first. I know on these streams we tend to look at the Colonials first. But this time we're going to go with the Wardens. So anything else you want to say here before we move on, Max?
Nope, I think that's good.
Excellent. All right. Let's get into the Warden fleet. Julian, you want to take the reins from here?
Cool. Starting off small, and third time's a charm for any longtime players. But the gunboats have been redesigned for the new update, just to kind of we now can support like walking around on decks and all that fun stuff. So it was time that they needed to get redesigned. It's fairly similar to the existing gunboats, but the big cool new thing is tripod mounts. When we pitched this and we're talking about this, we wanted like half tracks of the sea, where this is where you're mounting tripods onto, or the tripod weapons onto, and yeah, overall just a awesome new design. There's your front and back shot for people taking screenshots.
Also, yeah, you can walk around on the deck, which is a very
Yep.
cool feature that we didn't have previously.
Oh yeah. The very first one had it, but the okay, Warden battleship. When we started this and designing battleships, one of the big things I wanted was for them not to feel like little chibi toy boats. Like I really pushed to make them as big as possible, with as many guns on deck as possible, without it feeling cartoonish. So I dove into that, and for the Wardens, we kind of wanted the Warden theme in general is just everything's a little bit older looking than the Colonial stuff, and we kept to that with the boats.
Good look at the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, these are really big. These are like they are bigger than a screen. Just in
Yeah,
case you're.
Yeah, if we had the time, I'd actually want to spend like an entire stream on just the battleship.
While we were developing them, we kept referring to like it is a floating town. Like it is the asset was bigger than we could have possibly thought. We bit off a ton when we took it on. Anyways, and the submarine, the Wardens, we wanted them to get a submarine, and this was extremely challenging to get working right. Lots of meetings, as well as just the overall feel. But we really feel like we have captured the player experience of driving a submarine.
Yeah, there was this one point I remember earlier on in development where we were deciding like should we embrace the challenges of getting the submarine actually working, or just making the submarine a lot more basic where you don't actually see the side and you're just kind of mounted in there like a tank, and we just all kind of felt like no, we just have to get the full experience in there. We have to get the players walking around in true Foxhole fashion, right? You gotta be walking around, seeing the players next to you, and you gotta be working with them. Right?
You have to be yelling at each other when there's water coming into your boat and sub.
You know, I will say for my part, there was a lot of challenges on this particular feature that I worked on that made me have to like rethink and relearn a whole bunch of stuff. So I think it'll be a very cool experience.
Cool. And to I was gonna say to go into a deep dive, but I feel like the puns are just gonna get out of
Just
control
gonna
here.
keep coming.
Yeah.
Max, over to you.
Okay, so this is gonna be rough. I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna try my best.
There's
to
a lot
explain how
here,
this stuff
guys.
works. We have. Let me say this: we have tested the submarine rigorously. We have had multiple crews of people try this thing, and nobody has mastered the submarine yet. It is the skill ceiling on this is astronomical, but it is so fun once you get the hang of it. So, you're going to be able to physically go underneath the water. You can be driving on the surface and then descend. They cannot be once underwater. They cannot be detected by conventional intel. So this is a good way to like sneak into enemy logistical supply lines and then possibly snipe off some freighters or soft infrastructure. There's a whole sonar system. There's for detecting enemy ships. It's difficult to even see what's going on, as in true submarine fashion. It's difficult to know what's going on around you without like physically searching for them. There's a battery system. There's torpedoes. There's periscopes. So much involved. And this isn't even scratching the surface of how the submarine.
Stop it with the puns.
That's not a fun.
Jeez. It's like
Max has
impossible
been
not
planning
to.
that one for a week. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
If you want to move to the next slide, or to the next slide, I think this one.
There's more, yeah.
This is really the meat and potatoes. So, when I say that you're going to descend from the surface to underwater, there is a physical Z plane, Z axis. So you can go up and you can maneuver up and down on any axis that you want. Attacking submarines is going to be highly relevant. In order to control the submarine, there are 3 main ballasts. And I'm going to give you guys a loose primer about this, but I'm not going to get into too
A
much
crash
detail.
course.
Yeah, I'm taking notes because I haven't figured it out yet.
We won't go in depth.
Okay, so the main ballast is like on a regular submarine. Flooding the main ballast will put the submarine into a neutral buoyancy. If you are on the surface of the water, flooding it will put the ship slightly below the surface of the water, and it will sit at one depth without moving. Flooding the negative ballast is a ballast that's at the front of the ship that will cause the ship to pitch down and will dive the sub in a crash dive. So this is going to make you go down really fast. The safety ballast exists because if the sub starts to take on water, for example, if you get hit by a sea mine or other content, which we haven't discussed yet, your ship is going to start to weigh more because a ship full of water weighs more. The safety ballast is there to offset the water that might be inside your ship. So if you start to take damage, it's going to take somebody's complete attention to try to keep the ship balanced in the water without surfacing. And of course, there's a crush depth. If the ship goes too low in the water, you're going to start to take damage. So you're going to want to try your best to keep flat. The dive officer is probably the most important for controlling your depth. In most cases, you won't need to use the negative or the safety ballast unless you're trying to maneuver really hard for whatever reason. All you should need to do to control the submarine is to flood the main ballast and have the dive officer control the fins on the side of the ship. Think of them like flat fins, and the dive officer pitches them up or pitches them down to fine-tune the depth of the ship. So I'll leave it at that. As I said, you guys are going to want to try this, and you're going to lose. You're probably going to take a lot of damage before you finally master it. But I promise that once you do get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
I said, Max, at the beginning that we had time limited, but I think we can go over time a little bit. So if we need to explore a little bit more, that's okay. There's a couple of systems that you discussed on the last slide: the sonar, the periscope, and the battery system. Is there like a really quick summary of each one of those that we can really quickly go over?
For sure. Okay, so the sonar, it sends. You can swap between 2 modes. One is it's a directional mode where it pings far out, even farther than your camera can see, and it will return information to you, rough information to you about what's out there. It might give you a signal strength and a general idea of what you're going to see. The submarine can follow those signal strengths until you get closer. You might see the enemy ship, and if you ping the ship within your camera range, you'll see ghosts of the ship. You'll see almost like echoes of where it might have been or what you might be seeing. And from that, you're going to have to infer like where you're going to fire your torpedo, at what depth you're going to want to hit it at. One thing to be careful of is that sonar will also give away your position to other enemy sonars. So if you are pinging for enemy ships, make sure that just be aware that you're advertising your position to them.
And how about the battery system?
So the battery system is used for keeping the ship. The ship has to manage its underwater time with its above water time, so you can't just stay underwater all the time. Certain functions on the ship will consume battery, like blowing your ballasts will take battery, as well as pinging with your sonar, and just staying underwater will consume oxygen and use up the battery. To recharge this battery, you have to surface the sub and sit idle. The assumption here is that your engine is no longer powering the ship's propellers. It's being used to power the battery system. So if you want to operate in enemy waters, you're going to have to be very careful about where you expose yourself.
One thing that was really cool during testing that I experienced, Max, is just having to rely on the player who's at the periscope and also at the sonar station. Like you sort of feel like you can't see much unless you're there, and you're sort of have to heavily rely on your voice comms, which I thought was really cool. Let's move on. Great.
Yeah, this is a great image of the submarine below water. You can see the outline of the rocks, so you know where we are. We are we're right in the water. It's not some like overlay. You're literally in the water. You're seeing the sea mines, and there's a depth charge from a
I
potential
want to
new
say
enemy ship.
one quick thing. This is a really good vehicle for using the cinematic camera on. Like all the seats, you can just kind of be in cinematic camera and enjoy it.
Yeah, especially if you're not piloting. Like,
Yeah.
The one thing I have to say is that it was an incredible amount of work to have to get these underwater areas working, because we're finally seeing a side of the world that we haven't seen for 6 years. And I won't get too far into it, but needless to say, it was a lot of work to make this one submarine happen. And we hope we can leverage all this gameplay in content in the future. So, yeah. Anything else, Max?
Nope.
Great. Um, let's move on here. Okay, let's move on to the Colonials.
Awesome. So, grab screenshots of the naval flags if you want them.
I mean, we can post them.
Yeah, we're gonna post them later. Cool. So the Colonials, we wanted. They also had a gunboat, so they have to have another gunboat. But this one we themed it more around like a river boat, patrol boat, and otherwise it is fairly similar in terms of like this is the vehicle for tripods, this is for tripod weapons, this is the vehicle with a light mortar cannon in this case, and it's a fast little patrol boat. Onto the battleship. The battleships, we were going for a as big as we could get, as big as we could make them. We wanted them to be impressive. We wanted you to see all the sensors, the rangefinders, everything you would expect out of an actual battleship fitting into the Foxhole world. And I want to point out, with the crew of 12 plus deck crew, that's just the seats. You'll need people running ammunition for you. You'll need people like doing everything else on the boat. But you need, if you want a fully manned ship, this one is 12. Cool. And opposite to the submarine, the Colonials have a destroyer, which is very well equipped to fight submarines. It will also have the sonar suite. You'll be able to hear and intercept pings from submarines. The depth charge launchers on the side, as well as being able to drop sea mines out behind you as you go. This thing is literally purpose built for hunting submarines.
All right, Max, let's talk about destroyer gameplay.
The destroyer gameplay, the one everybody needs to hear about, because this one is the counterpart to the Warden submarine. As Julian mentioned, it is a sub hunter, and it is deceptively fun to fly. To sail this thing. To hunt enemy submarines takes a lot of teamwork. You can't just ping your sonar and find a submarine and expect to kill it. There is so much maneuvering involved to get around it, to hem it in, and to isolate it to a point where you can get it to surface and then engage it. So in a couple of our tests watching it, it's like you're dropping a bunch of depth charges off the side, hoping you get a lucky hit. You don't know if you hit it or not, and then you might see the sub slowly surface nearby. It's going to start firing at you. You're going to start firing at it, and it feels really, really good to drive this thing around. It is one of the, if not the fastest large ship in the game, with the widest operational range. And what I mean by that is where the submarine gets a chance to be very sneaky, gets to get behind enemy lines and stay hidden and try not to, try to get a couple of easy kills. This one can do something very similar by being mobile. It's not sneaky about it. It gets into the enemy line. It can operate freely, free from a fleet, free from port, engage enemy ships, and get away with reasonable ease. And that's sort of the trade-off that you're looking at here. Both of these have very similar combat roles. They counter each other, but they both perform similar logistical disruption functions.
Yeah, I think the versatility there is a really good word, Max. I found when testing this out that just driving it around, it's a from outside the gunboats, it's the most maneuverable of the large ship. Is that correct to say?
Yep.
I would also say it's probably going to be pretty effective at impacting the front line if there's a river or something nearby. This is going to be pretty easy to maneuver into inland areas compared to the other boats, which might take a little bit. And it's got a lot of firepower for that situation. So while the sub might be able to, the sub is really, in a lot of ways, it's very anti-Navy. This can have ultimately more offensive roles in the end. So I think that's a really important distinction to make as well. It's not just an anti-sub, like a sub hunter. It's also has a lot more versatility than the sub.
Yep. I mean, exactly. What do you want to do? And this thing can probably do it.
And here you go if you want a screenshot of the ammunition types being added for the naval boat specific.
All right. Let's talk about the next thing here. I feel like we still got a lot to go. We're going to go over time. That's fine. Let's just keep on going here. So the one thing I want to say about this before we get started, this is sort of like third time's a charm for us. We know there are beach landings in the game. The current version in the live game is the second major iteration, and when we sat down to revisit beach landings, we basically said, okay, this time it has to work like how we want to work. Their goals we didn't quite hit, so we think this time. I think Max, we finally got it.
Yeah, don't say that, you jinx.
Last famous word.
Yeah, as Mark was just saying, so we've been taking a hard look at naval landings since update 14 when we first implemented them. Even as early as 2 months ago, I was like logging into game to watch the naval landings happen because I think they are one of the coolest activities that our players have ever done. Even without the tools to really make it a success, you guys are still trying to do it. And for this time around, we wanted to make sure that all of the friction points that you guys are having with naval landings, we wanted to try to smooth them over as much as we could.
I also can't tell you how many times I have done stuff to try to address like some issues with naval landings, like many times. I think it's important to recognize it's really hard in this kind of gameplay environment. So I think we got it this time, though. I think we got it.
Something else I want to add, and obviously you guys can sense our excitement over beach landings, is that probably in terms of playing as a team, internal to the studio, we've probably done more beach landings together
yeah.
than any other form of gameplay. I know Max, he used to do a lot of the preparation, and I used to help out. But as a team, we played this, and I've always said to Max, like, why are we playing as a team? The thing that's the hardest thing to do. Anyhow, yeah.
Okay, so amphibious assaults can be formed anywhere. So some work was done on the ramps. Back when we first introduced the beaches, it was literally the only place you could deploy your ramps. You could beach your landing ship. So you couldn't really do a beach landing except in the few places we told you was okay, which allowed the defenders to over prepare on every beach to make sure that you never got anywhere. Now you can land anywhere. These ramps will deploy on all sorts of surfaces. I'm not going to say not literally anywhere. If it's a sheer cliff, you're probably not going to be able to deploy there. But you could the number of places you can make your landing is just way more.
It's not restricted to beaches, though the beaches will still be there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the beaches are still going to be a really good place to land. Just
I would argue there's more beaches now, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. It's easier to supply a prolonged seaboard invasion. We noticed that once you guys did make your landing, even if you were successful in taking the first town, it was almost impossible to keep that town supplied for more than a day or two. So we eased that frustration somewhat. You can deliver armor and field weapons and equipment in quantity. The key word here is quantity. We know that you guys would bring tanks on your barges, but you could never keep up. You could never bring enough armor to counter the defender. The defender always had more tanks ready to go. Now we wanted to make sure that you could at least bring some light equipment to the field in an equal measure. And now you can. This is probably the most important part. I don't know why I put this last. You can safeguard your deployment point against counterattacks. So almost every screenshot we see that comes out on Reddit is of like the side the defender has like completely encircled the landing ship and is just spawn killing everybody there. So now we've created options for the attacker to protect their spawn point.
Right. So oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
And possibly more importantly, even if you were successful with your beach landing, as your player group starts to move off the beach, we would see people do sneaky things like bringing in a landing craft full of HE grenades to bomb the landing ship from the rear. We protect it against that as well.
So essentially, we want to have this Saving Private Ryan type of scenario that actually has a battle on the beach, like where the front line, where players are fighting, are at the beach. And that can be a long period of time versus the beach landings now, where you have to pretty much surprise the enemy, not have any combat on the beach, and be able to like move inland, capture their base first. That's the big difference, right? Yeah, great,
super cool.
Cool. So we are introducing two new large ships that we've been dubbing them kind of the Logi ships, but there's more to it than that. This is the base ship, which is your mobile spawn point on Mass. It is where you're going to be building the landing ships from, like the landing ship. Effectively, you're going to anchor this, and then the players will be able to build landing ships off the side, and then everybody will spawn in the base ship, jump into the landing ship, get all your gear, and like haul to the beach. There's your front and back.
all right, on to base ship gameplay.
Yeah, so the main takeaway from this base ship is it's going to replace the white whale that you guys are used to using. We've given it a lot. It's a large ship, so it has all of the bells and whistles we were just talking about with the leaks and the rooms, and you have to protect it. The main takeaway here, though, is you can anchor it, and you can set your spawn to the ship offshore. So you don't have to put your spawn right on the beach. You still can. So if you want to make yourself susceptible to that counterattack, you can, but it's an option that you now have. It's got a couple of side-mounted machine guns that will help you, like the newly spawned players, to protect the spawn point, and it has this automated defense turret, which will attack enemy naval ships. So it's not going to protect you from the land assault, but it will protect you from minor naval threats. That is to say, anything that's not a large ship. If a submarine is coming up on this thing, it's not going to protect you against that.
So if I am at the home region, I see there's a naval invasion in progress. I can go to the deployment map, see the spawn point here, spawn at this base, build a landing craft, which we'll talk more about in a bit, and then use that to actually land on the beach. If you die, you can respawn back here again.
Yeah.
Great. All right.
Cool. And landing ships are fairly basic and exactly what you'd expect from the kind of big cinematic Saving Private Ryan D-Day landing boats. There was a version where we were going to have just a yellow landing ship, just one, but we talked about it and we wanted them to go faction specific. Cool.
All right. So you might have noticed that these things are much larger than the original landing ships, and the reason for that is because you can now load tanks onto these things. Tanks, armored cars, scout vehicles, or scout tanks, emplacements. You can bring equipment to the beach using these things. They're extremely maneuverable. They're very fast. They're and they're extremely accessible. They are, once the base ship has deployed, it takes almost no time or effort to build one of these things and get it going. So you're not waiting for the guy to finish building this thing, or you're not waiting for the next ship to come back. You're just going to build it quickly, hop on, we wanted to reduce the friction of getting from the ship to the beach as much as possible, because the attackers already have enough disadvantages. We wanted to just give you as much as we could.
Good.
The last thing is it can be repackaged. So once you get it to the beach, we know this is a little bit strange, but we liked that. We noticed that one of the hardest things to do during a naval landing is to get somebody to ferry people. It's just not something, when the most exciting event is going on, the last thing you want to do is being driving to and from a boat, just moving people to the beach, even though it was an essential task. So in this case, we've done away with that. You only need to ferry one direction. You move the ship to the beach, and then you can return this to its BMAT form, and then to clear up the beach for the next wave.
I just wanted to point out something I forgot, which was that the old Amphibious landers are still in the game. So if anyone was freaking out that we took them out or something, they're still in the game, though not all the variants survived that transfer.
Very cool.
Cool. And the storage ship, which is where you're going to get your tanks and field guns and everything else you want on the beach out of and moved. In the same fashion, the old landing ship is being replaced with it for these two new large ships.
Storage ship gameplay.
All right, so now you can all kind of see how it's coming together. The last piece of the puzzle here for the beach landings is the storage ship. So that landing ship can carry light tanks and field weapons to it, or on it, but you can't. But where do you get them from? So the storage ship is another strategic level asset. It's a very large ship that is meant to bring. It's basically a storage depot on water. It can bring crates, so you can bring crates of supplies, you can bring vehicles, and those vehicles can drive directly off the ship onto these landing ships, or they can be craned on with a crane that comes with it. Yeah, if once the beach has been secured, that front of the ship does open up, which allows you to drive tanks directly off the platform onto the beach or onto a field pier.
Yep, you can crash this thing right into a beach and open it up if you want to.
Which brings us to the field pier. We've mentioned it a couple times already, but we haven't actually shown you what it is. It's similar to like a Mulberry Harbor from the D-Day landings. You can build a long pier out from the beach to your logistical ships. So perhaps you were performing your naval landing from your base ship from the water. Once you've secured the beach, you can build this out to your base ship, so you no longer need to ferry people to the front. Furthermore, you can dock your storage ship with this field pier, which allows you to directly transfer vehicles to the beach. Larger vehicles, not just smaller, lighter vehicles, but up to medium tanks, anything that could go into a storage depot.
So sorry, go on.
And most importantly, but in combination with the storage ship, the field pier and the storage ship are used to supply the landing long term. You can, once you've made your landing, once you've taken your ground, you can continue to bring crates, drop it into these ships, and then trucks can be brought to those storage ships to pull those crates out and then deliver them to the front line where they need to go. So a naval landing could be persisted across multiple days.
So the idea here, when combining the base ship and the storage ship, is to bring the entire logistics chain out into sea, right? So you have your forward base, you have your supply depot essentially, and you can do something very similar that you do on land, but now you can do it at sea.
The field bridge is still in, and it is your temporary bridge, and the field pier is just a more permanent thing.
Great. Let's move on to ship production.
No. No, 100%.
All right, fleet production.
Boy, this just goes on and on, huh?
There's a lot.
Okay, so another big question on your minds is probably, how do you build these things? You can build them at a new facility called the Facility Dry Dock. It is a dry dock in true form. You will drive your ship directly into the bay, and then you will raise the doors, and then it will drain the water, which will allow you to repair these ships as well as build them. The dry dock will require shippable materials. So these are not like your assembly materials that you guys are used to. They are full shippables that have to be moved by train to produce the ship. And there's going to be a new resource called Rare Allies, which we will get into more detail on the subreddit Q&A after the stream. But to suffice to say, it's introduced for new late game content, and it's found by mining salvage and these offshore platforms. Not oil platforms, offshore platforms.
So there's the parts that are needed to produce the ship parts, or these are the parts needed to produce ships. Let's
And these are the shippables.
talk about the offshore platforms.
Long-time players might have feelings about this.
Yeah. So it is really important for us to, again, reiterate that main goal, which is that we don't want this content to be locked to just a small subset of players, and that includes producing them. Offshore platforms and this rare material are all meant to help address that problem. So if you are a smaller player group and you're worried that you might never get a chance to build one of these things, rest assured that's one of our main drivers behind these offshore platforms. You'll be able to build them by out at sea. It'll consume coke to keep it powered, and then it will produce heavy oil as well as these a chance of producing rare alloys. They are at sea, which means you can't just build a wall around it to claim it. So that's a really important distinction between perhaps some of the other resources that we have in the game. And you'll have to actively work at it. So this is not something that you can just set and forget. You can't just build a platform and then keep everybody away from it and you'll just get everything out of it for a couple of days. You're going to have to continuously operate it, which is going to give the enemy a chance to counter you, to come in and destroy it or destroy your logistics that's running it. And you'll have to prepare for these operations. You'll have to come gather your materials, and before you even set sail to try to operate one of these, you'll want to have to do a bunch of prep work to begin with.
All right. Well, I think it's time to finally talk about what's happening with the world. I'm sure everybody knows that the world is going to be updated. So,
with regard to this stuff too, it's important to recognize also that for players who maybe haven't been around for other updates, we always do follow-up updates as well. So if your faction doesn't have a type of vessel or something that you think it might, you're probably going to be happy with future updates.
All right, let's get back to the world expansion.
Okay, so a lot of changes to the world. As you'll have probably noticed, a whole bunch of the water-based island maps were removed, and it is my great joy to tell you that there are no more islands chained with bridges. The bridges are gone. There are no more random islands. So basically, these are new maps. There are a couple of old maps and features from old maps, like you will recognize parts of Tempest Island, you will recognize parts of Fisherman's Row. There are parts of Oarbreaker that are there, but for the most part, we redesigned these from the ground up. And I think, maps like Godcross and Oarbreaker have seen almost complete overhauls. There are several new inland maps. So to kind of account for this on the west coast, as we added some on the east coast. The Fingers has been sort of rearranged into more of an island map as it was kind of intended to be originally. So there's a lot more water. There's a lot more open ocean, and they're not all chained together by bridges. Having the interior maps still allowed us to expand out and create more ocean maps. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. If there's anything, Max, that you want to talk about in terms of like the design or anything,
yeah, I mean, we nuked a lot of bridges. Felt really good.
Yeah, they're mostly gone. Oh, another thing
bridge
is
removal update.
A lot of riverways were widened and made a little bit more traversable, and a lot of work was done also to support underwater gameplay.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Sorry, go on, Max.
Not just underwater gameplay too, but we mentioned this earlier. But the rivers, you can sail your ships in and out of these inside lakes, or the inland lakes. You can the bodies of water that exist out in the ocean are not were designed in such a way that it gives you a lot of freedom of mobility for the ships, to give you a lot of strategic depth, a lot of ways you can possibly change the fight from war to war.
Yeah, so removing the bridges was a lot bigger challenge than it seems like. A lot of the gameplay is predicated on all the deployment points being linked, but we really want to take this risk. It's something that was in the vision for naval for 5-6 years now, and we expect that these new regions at the edges are going to be a lot more fluid in terms of how often they're contested, and how in terms of territories changing ownership. We're just expecting this to be a whole different type of gameplay than what we expect on the mainland.
I also want to clarify a point. We haven't removed bridges. They're just
there are bridges in the game. The
just
bridges still exist.
just in the islands.
They're all gone.
Yeah, no, never again.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so here you can see some of the changes of some of these maps. Obviously, some of these are pretty dramatic. Like Godcroft's is basically unrecognizable. Steamer Landing is a location that has been rumored for a very long time. Fisherman's Row is kind of back to its old self. This is kind of how it debuted with a couple of different changes. Orebreaker is not exactly the way it was before. There's a couple of similar islands there. Conclave has been redesigned, though we still liked the gameplay around it, so we wanted to keep it, just kind of tweaking it a little bit to make it a little bit friendlier. But there's a whole bunch of new maps. Fingers has been redesigned a little bit in order to make it look and feel more like a coastal map. And Tempest Island is pretty much, again, back to the way it was originally with a few new islands. And this doesn't even include, do we have a slide for the interior maps, or are we just talking about the island map?
No, it was only this one. There was just too much in this.
So there's three more maps as well. There's Reaver's Pass, Silicon Shelf, and the Claustra, which kind of bridge the gaps. And there's been a couple of relocated things, like Port of Rhyme is now in Silicon Shelf, so it's actually at the coast as opposed to Weathered, which is still a little bit more inland than it was.
Oh yeah, I forgot about these.
Observation tower changes.
Okay, so we wanted to give you guys more reason to fight over these islands. The question would come up in our development process is why are people attacking islands? What are the point of their existence? Observation towers are one of the ways that we feel this will help expand the naval gameplay. The islands have many of these observation towers, the islands and coastlines, not just the islands, where it's a directional intel. It's a very long range, and you can point it in a certain direction to give you intel over a large body of water. So claiming the islands will give you more intel of the surrounding bodies of water. Yeah, and I don't think there's much more to say about that, except that we put it in the activity log to make sure that you guys can see who changes it. And yeah, hopefully we're looking forward to feedback about these locations, because we might, yeah, we'll see.
All right, I think that is it for naval. Now with the big updates, we like to touch different parts of the game. And there's a bunch of land-based content. I mean, most of the game still takes place on land, so we gotta remember that.
Wait, there's more?
Yes, there is one more section. So let's jump into it. All right, self-propelled artillery. Finally, Julian.
Finally. We know everybody's wanted this for a very long time, and we're finally doing it, adding mobile artillery to the game. And yeah, we 150 millimeters, and it does exactly what you think it's going to do. Needs to deploy, needs loaders, gunners, driver. You'll need someone like with binoculars observing. Yeah, it's a great late game piece of artillery. One thing, this is some of the work of our new concept artist. He was relieving me so I could focus on getting the feel of boats down, and we all think he did an amazing job on this stuff.
Yeah, very cool.
Wardens are not forgotten. We in the lore, the origins of the flood tank, we wanted to stick to it and have them have a copy of what the Colonials are up to. So we thought it was quite fun.
All right, we'll move things along since we are getting overtime here. So let's talk about the rocket platform. So this is something we've been really excited about because rockets, as you know, for those of you that have been with the game for a long time, know that we used to have rocket sites in the game, and and we had taken a break from them because the game had evolved a lot, and we found that because the rockets were put into place many years ago and the game has evolved and we needed to go back and take a look at the rockets again, and we want to reintroduce them in a way that was more fitting with current Foxhole gameplay and current Foxhole content. So players are now able to build their own rocket platforms at the facilities. They're built using rocket parts that are shipped either by flatbed, train, or all the different ways you can shippables in the game. And one of the things we want to do, again, tying it to existing content, is now the way that these rockets are used in order to get the targeting information. You actually have to build an intelligence center. So instead of the old method, you now have to have an intelligence center. So that ties it into the bunker gameplay. They are tweaked differently from the old rockets, so they can fire into the same or directly neighboring regions. And this is a balance factor that may change at some point, but currently that is the current way it works. And again, it leverages the same rare alloys that's used in other new high end content in the game. So that's it. There's actually a lot more to say on all this content, but again, we're a bit over time here, so we're kind of rushing through it. And
Build your own rockets. There.
yeah, so yeah, that's. I'm glad we're here, but there is one more thing that we want to show you guys. This is a feature that we've been excited for many years, and like many things, we thought at one point that it wasn't going to be possible. We know players have been asking for this for a very, very, very long time. And going back to those slides at the very beginning, talking about our ongoing commitment, even if the game isn't exactly how you like it now, we're always going to be working on it. We're always going to be making it better. And I think this feature is going to showcase that philosophy the most. So, um, yeah, I'm almost I'm I've been so hyped about this feature that
Let's
I
just
feel
stop the
hesitant.
stream.
I feel like hesitant in showing this video.
Maybe we
But
just don't show it.
Yeah, let's just stop the stream now. We're
I'll hit
done.
end. It's fine.
Yeah, we're
let's do it. All right, finally. I feel like I've waited 7 years to show that video, guys.
Towing has arrived in Foxhole.
Does that
Towing
imply
has finally arrived. They said that we couldn't do it, and I'm just I don't know what to say. I'm just so excited about this. It's been something I've been wanting to talk about. I've been wanting to share just for so long. So now certain trucks and half track classes have the capability to tow. They can tow every field weapon in the game now can actually be towed, right? So if you saw the new field gun that we released earlier, it's one of the reasons why we did in this update. It was actually ready in a previous update, but we felt it was more appropriate to go into an update when we had towing available. So the way that towing works is it's exactly as you see. You back your truck up or your half track into a field weapon or a trailer, and you can use the hitch action, and it connects together, and it just works like that. And different vehicles are going to have different level of towing power. So when you tow, it will impact the speed of your vehicle, and depending on the engine power of the vehicle, that may change. Another door that this has opened up is to new field weapon mechanics. So previously, we were really excited about having all these different field gun variants, but one of the things that really bothered us is that we didn't have the levers to make them interesting as uh, we want them to be. So the different field guns, they all kind of worked very similarly, but now we have the deployable mechanic, and that um, means that there's certain field guns that are more powerful, but they require deployment. They're difficult to push with infantry, and you need to use towing in order to use them effectively. So this has opened up a lot of doors for us, and it will continue to open up a lot more doors in the future. Let's actually get to some of these
Oh,
field guns, shall we?
spoilers.
Yeah.
Cool. So these field guns, the players that have already played will know that they are existing weapons that are being adapted to the new heavy field chassis. The 75 millimeter and the incendiary rocket launchers for the Wardens are getting their new chassis and with the deployable state. And the Colonials, if you next tab, yeah, Colonials were adapting their heavy weapons onto the heavy field gun chassis. There will be more in the future to come, but it was more important that we get the existing stuff where it needs to be. Then in the previous trailer, this slide was moved at the last moment to move it into the towing stuff.
I actually didn't realize it was moved. I talked about it because that was the
Yeah, no, that was my bad. I moved this one into the towing section. We are adding some early game. We wanted to add more options for early game. We always do. And talking with the balance team, me and Rob, we came up with some light early game anti-tank, the light guns. So the faction, the difference in the factions being one is more automatic and one is more single shot heavy. Uh, and yeah, skip to the Warden one, Mark.
Yeah.
Next, and there's your Warden option. Once again, these are, or not once again, these were meant to be themed more around older guns that wouldn't see use once kind of tanks roll out, but they are meant for early game action.
Yeah. I have to rush this along a bit, so we're just gonna skip over some things here and get straight over to the. Well, actually,
I want to say
yeah,
one thing about this.
yeah.
The Wardens needed one more half track for the towing update, and again, the concept art team and balance team came up with the Warden's new towing half track, which is weaker on the offense and has less crew seats, but it's still pretty damn cool.
So the Colonial one is going to be the heavy half track, the
Yep,
defensive one.
the Colonials. We are repurposing their armored half track variant because we wanted to basically. We looked at what we can do to increase the usage of variants throughout the game, and we decided they had one extra one. They got the armored one as their towing, and we had to fill the gap for the Wardens.
Great. Let's talk about the heavy trucks.
Do you want to take this, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I
This is
So we wanted to add in. I've always felt that we've added so many combat vehicle classes into the game, so many tank classes, but on the logistics front, we've only had essentially one base truck class per faction, and we have variants there. But we want to create a new chassis um, that will open the door to new truck variants in the future, and with towing implemented in the game now, we felt that there was enough. There's there's a new lever there that we can pull on to make this interesting. So the heavy duty truck class is going to be the best at towing in the game. So when towing, regular trucks will be have their speed a lot more impacted, but the heavy trucks will be impacted far less. Um, and this particular variant for the Colonials will be effective off road. And yeah, this is going to be the Colonial heavy duty truck, and we'll move on to the Warden heavy duty truck. This is the Warden version. It does not perform as well off road, but like I said, it will be the best towing truck for the Warden faction. So
Cool.
moving on here. Oh, sorry. Was there one
Nope,
thing? You
nope, that's it.
Great. And now, moving on to the transport trailers here. So, this is with towing. We wanted to give some additional upgrades for logistics, and it was an opportunity here. So, transport trailers can be produced at facilities, and they can extend the utility for any vehicle that can tow. So that includes like certain half tracks and trucks, and they can there's a couple of variants of these actually. So let's get into these. There's the tumble box, lamp loader, and the junk wagon. The interesting names. And
Amazing names. I love them.
the tumble box is able to hold your large ammunition like artillery ammo, your large facility materials, your metal beams, so on and so forth. And the junk wagon holds scrap. So just when you're going on your scrap runs, you can hold a little bit more. And then the fuel one, you're able to put various types of fuel into the game. So that wraps up towing. And that wraps up the stream for the most part. So again, thanks for watching, and look out for the update to drop on October the 26th in a couple of weeks. And just to go over a couple of things in the schedule here, what's going to be happening between now and then. So one thing to look out for that will actually go live very soon now is the official announcement trailer. And this was a collaboration between Jeffrey Jennings from Press Corps from the community, like we did last year. We're very thankful that he was able to collaborate on this again, and it's a fantastic trailer. The voiceover is amazing, so that's gonna go live in about uh, the next 10 15 20 minutes or so. So look out for that. And then we're gonna do a Reddit Q&A later this afternoon, and the dev branch will drop next week, followed by a concept art um, blog post, and then that will lead our way into the release. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'm sure we'll be in touch in the dev branch and on Reddit and various channels in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna be again in the dev branch looking feedback, and a lot of tweaking always happens there. So if there's any once you get your hands on the content, you'll have a better idea on how everything works, how everything is balanced, and that's when your feedback is gonna be really important. So be on the lookout for that. And I think that's it. Let's wrap it up.
All right. As always, the stream is going to be archived on our YouTube channel shortly after, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
Yep.
Okay, and then yeah, so look forward. I guess Mark just gave all the information. Usually I give some information here, so
Sorry for stealing the thunder.
At the end of the day, stay foxy or something. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.